Okay, now for my presentation on racism and sexism in the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. Instead of an essay, I decided to give you more of my talking points and then show you a partial outline of how I would put this together. I figured the other essays gave you enough examples of written arguments and that another presentation on process from me probably served more use for you. First, I'd like to point out some problems with the canon fodder in Marvel films. They tend to be dark-skinned, for one, the ice giants in Thor, for example, or the two villains to our right here, the Chitauri from Avengers on the top there, and the Sakarans from Guardians of the Galaxy on the bottom. These villains often also move in groups or swarms to emphasize insect-like behavior. They do as they're told, in contrast with the heroes who focus largely on heroic individualism, even if they do cooperate. In order to justify the scale of violence, these villains have to have no motive other than love of violence and destruction. They are deprived of any culture that isn't geared toward this. They are given no individual identities and no character depth. We do not imagine them with families at home, with children who will miss them. They are there and only destructive, like locusts, so that our heroes can pile them up like firewood without us getting too squeamish about it. Oh, now I know what some of you are saying. These creatures did attack us, and with no provocation, but the victors always tell that story. And you need to keep in mind that this is a movie, and that the writer and director set it up that way. While merely having dark skin doesn't make this particularly racist agenda, the structure of robbing people of complexity and individuality is the same structure racism uses to denigrate people. A racist will claim that black Americans or Vietnamese or whoever all look alike. We point out how often the whole group harbors the enemy, or that they move in mobs and riots. We focus on acts of violence rather than any motivation for the violence, etc. Frequently, if we were to point out sexism in the Avengers, someone is going to yell, "Black Widow is a strong female character." First, when we want a strong female character, we mean strong characterization, not someone who is capable of killing lots of people. The women in these films all adhere to a common standard of beauty. Even women warriors like Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy, the actress is chosen based on her body being attractive rather than her body being capable of the violence needed from her. And her outfit, along with every other outfit worn by leading ladies in these films, are single layer and emphasize secondary sexual characteristics. In the Avengers, the Black Widow's superpower is manipulating men with sexual stereotypes. Perhaps that's a satiric comment upon men having their stereotypes used against them, but it also emphasizes a stereotype about men, that we should want to be manipulated by these women and that they will use it against us. The first woman shown in Guardians of the Galaxy, Berit, is a one-night stand used for a sequence of sexist jokes by our protagonist. Sometimes we'll talk about the Bechdel test for judging sexism in a movie. This test asks if two or more women have a name and speak to one another about something other than a man. Iron Man, Captain America, The Avengers, Age of Ultron, Iron Man 2, Captain America Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, and Guardians of the Galaxy all fail this test. Only Thor survives the Bechdel test, and Iron Man 3. Briefly. It makes one wonder that, even if there was a Marvel film with a female lead, there is not, whether even that film would pass the test. But how can we have a movie? Violence is a fact, etc. Well, I would point out that while it maintains its sexist structure, Civil War actually passes the racism test, not only by having multiple people of color playing a role, everyone's still standardly beautiful, though, that both sides of the conflict have been given motives and character depth. You'll also notice the body count is really low in this film, and the only people who are victims of violence are, well, go watch the film. I'd also like to point out that the flying monkeys in Wizard of Oz were actually slaves to the Wicked Witch, and while they were treated in the same way as dark-skinned, cultureless, personalityless denizens of evil, Dorothy managed not to kill any of them. She freed them, actually. So, here's our outline. The best thing about this is I'm going to get some debate. It's okay if we disagree, but at least we're talking about how violence works and how we justify it in order for us to be more careful with the real-life lives we risk every day. I have my thesis here, and it's a bit long. I'll probably break that down into 2 sentences, but the last bit does make a claim. The context section, I've broken it into 2 paragraphs, one on the recent efforts at diversity in order to introduce the problem, and one on why structure is as important to show that my contribution shouldn't be ignored. In the main analysis, I have the first section on where Marvel still fails in the representation department. Then I move on into 3 paragraphs on gender, and I'll likely have 3 or 4 on race, depending on how it works out. However, on the screen, I have a minimum of 8 paragraphs, which would be close to 4 pages. If the race is 3 as well, plus the conclusion has another 2 pages minimum, making 6 pages total.